Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker-Carl. So anyway, what are we talking about today? We are continuing our discussion of Love, Life, God, The Journey of Creation by Jarrad Hewett. And last week we talked about, we kind of started into the preface and had a little thoughts about this book and whatnot. And today I'm guessing we're probably just going to start right into whatever we all feel like talking about, whether it's the first chapter or continuing on with the preface. But before we get going, just a little bit of housekeeping. For those of you who are watching this as a live broadcast, just to let you know, we are real here. And sometimes we use strong language. We are talking about religious beliefs. And so if different opinions than your own easily offend you, I don't recommend you watch this, because we share our opinions, we share our beliefs, we respect each other, and we believe that all beliefs have value. So, before we get going with our conversation, I just want to give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we can get this chat going. So, guys, jump on out. Mute.
Hi, it's Catherine in Shawnee, Oklahoma, and I love that we have to preface our Zooms.
I'm Angel Studebaker in South Carolina.
Dan Sissick in Las Vegas, and I agree with you, Catherine. It's sad that these days we have to really preface things like that we can't honestly and in a civil way talk about things like we do here.
I'm Lori Emmons in Denver.
So was that everybody? Sandy, did you jump out? Did I miss you?
Sandy didn't.
No, good morning, Sandy. We're here in sunny Miami Beach. Do you hear me? Hello?
Yep, you're a little choppy this morning, but we can hear you.
Do you hear me?
Oh, you're freezing up. It may be sunny down there, but you're having a hurricane version of your internet. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe try restarting and jump back in again. I don't know. Yeah, guys, I think it's interesting that I don't know. It's not like we have to say, hey, this is what we're going to talk about. You know, we've been getting together on this mastermind for a lot of years now. And, you know, we've been making a recording, put it on YouTube. We've been live on Google Hangouts. We've done all kinds of different things. And for the most part, we haven't had any issues with anybody being upset. However, I have noticed that with live streams on Facebook is sometimes people get all weird about it. So, but now we have this opportunity to do this when we don't have Google Hangouts anymore. And I feel like we can get some more participation and people can watch what we're talking about in a live kind of a way. And I think it's a great thing that we can do that. But yeah, we got to let you know up front, hey, you know, we're talking about subjects that sometimes people are very opinionated on, and we respect each other's opinions, and that's why we can talk to each other in an open manner like this. But I realize that not everybody can do that, and hopefully, if you're watching this and you're open, that you're able to do it. And if you haven't been able to do it before, then maybe you will when you see that we can. So hopefully that will work out that way. So anyway, today we are continuing our discussion of Love, Life, God by Jarrad Hewett. Yeah, thank you for holding that up there, Dan. It's a great book so far. It's really interesting. Thank you, Sandy. Awesome. I don't have the physical version. I have the Kindle and then the audio version, so I can't hold that up. But so let me just kind of get in here. I'll share a little bit. So in the preface, Jarrad kind of introduces this idea that we are all one in the vast universe of infinite space. At the smallest level, we are all just a bunch of particles floating around in the whole. There's no separation between us and source, or what many call God. We are frequency, vibration, thought, creation, everything. we are one with all that is. And he kind of gives us this idea that that one with all that is kind of equals God. And he says we're simply an individualized expression of source energy. And let's see, there's a quote I wanted to read here. It says, now you think you know who you are. You are an individual. And to some extent, yes, you are. However, you are an individualized expression of source energy, which we all are. We've come forward now to help you understand that while you perceive yourself on this grand journey, a journey you are very much on, you needn't take it so seriously. You needn't ever feel alone. You needn't ever suffer. You are greatly, greatly loved by all that is, because you are all that is, and the all that is complete. And and so you needn't ever feel alone. You needn't ever suffer. Okay, so one thing that kind of brought up for me is that you know, in Christianity, in my experience from everything I learned being in a Christian school for most of my young life, I felt like they were teaching us that God was outside of ourselves, that we must ask Jesus into our hearts and ask him for forgiveness so that we can be saved, or give ourselves over to him and his will in our lives. But I don't think that that's really what, I feel like that's not really what was meant by that. And so I'm just reading from my notes, guys, because I want to make sure I remembered these thoughts that I had. And so I'm just going to read through some of this. He said, or I'm thinking to myself, we are God makes more sense to me, and in the fact that, you know, rather than asking God into ourselves like he's outside of ourselves, that this idea of we are God, and that we don't have to let him in because he's already there. He's already a part of us. We have to recognize that he is already there, but not as an individual, but as we are all God. And we are not asking him for forgiveness. We are allowing ourselves to forgive ourselves for getting it all wrong in the first place. And we have already learned in other ways that forgiveness is the key, but it is not asking others or God to forgive us. It is forgiving ourselves for acting or believing, etc., for what we thought we knew. And for what we thought we knew is just a lie or a story that we've been telling ourselves. So in one of these sections, there's a, let's see, he was talking about, and I posted this quote in the group about, if you want something you've never had, you got to do something you've never done. In this case, it involves examining who and what you are and realizing you are not the sum of your past. The future is yours to create. If you want to be a new you, be a new you, but you know that you can't make anything totally new by using parts from the old. In simpler terms, we're going to show you how to forgive and how to truly love. And I feel like what they're trying to say there is that we have to forgive ourselves, let go of all this mumbo jumbo that we think that we knew, and realize that we are all okay as it is. And we're in this kind of like moment of now. And the way to experience love is by simply being love in the moment. Because when we're thinking about like all these stories that we tell ourselves stories about other people, we tell ourselves stories about ourselves, we tell our stories about, you know, what happened in the past and what might happen in the future. And so much of it is based in fear. And when we can let go of all that stuff and live in the moment right here and now, then we can experience the peace, the love, the everything that, you know, what Christianity tries to tell you. You have to let God in order to experience, or you have to ask Jesus for forgiveness. You have to ask him into your heart. And I'm like, you know, I feel like it's the other way around. It's just that it already is. We just have to recognize that we are already a part of God, and that we are, as a group, as a collective, as all parts in the universe, are God. And when we can recognize that, then we can be at peace, and we can yeah. So anyway, those are my thoughts so far. I know you guys probably have something to say on all that. Jump out.
I'll be the first to jump out because not that I totally disagree with you. I think aspects of what you're saying are there, and as I looked at it, and as I've had a couple things come up for me from reading this, um, it went back to when there's Karen, yay, um, that uh, because it says like me, I think I said something like this last week. Before we were ever born, God knew us. And so if God knew us even before we were born, to me that says that yes, we were there somehow, somewhere. So maybe in this context of what you're saying is that yes, we are all one, but I think in being in the human form, I think there's somehow a disconnect somewhere. And that in getting back in relationship or back into connection is, for lack of a better word, that I can think of, is maybe realizing that we have to reconnect back or accept that connection. So therefore, maybe saying, and maybe that's where the forgiving ourselves kind of is, you know, allowing that to happen to reconnect back with the source, as this book is calling it, and that oneness to where we can feel back in connection and back where we belong, I guess, so to speak. And but I also have questions about like loneliness and things like that. If we're connected and why is there so much rampant loneliness out there? Why is there so many people? And I've experienced it. I mean, I'm single. I don't have anybody. It's just me, and in that sense, I have days where I come home and I come into an empty house, or I go out and do stuff, or I do this, and I feel very lonely, very alone. So in that sense, that's where some of my issues come up, because if all I have to say, is be love, and I do love myself, I love my family, I love my friends, but where, how do you get to that full oneness then? That's where I'm still having, and maybe this book will help with that as we go through it more.
Do you hear me now? Oh, good. Sandy at Miami Beach. It's sunny now. We had our storm in Miami last Sunday, but yeah, my internet is wonky. Yeah, I guess, I've read the first chapter up through the first chapter, and it resonates with me. I never was a religious person or grew up in any religion, really. I mean, my parents, we went, so I never really grew up with this idea of, in a more spiritual way, I guess, as I focus talking about that, everything is different forms of creation and God expressing here. And I thought I like the way the book is laid out, like how, I guess, like he's asking questions and then he's getting these answers. But then you can see where the mind comes in whenever he's sort of blown away and starting to think in the mind. He's like, no, you're disconnecting, you're resisting. And I think that's where we disconnect from God and creators, because we start thinking and our mind separates us. So, and you, Dan, bringing up the loneliness, I think we all have moments where we feel alone. And I always remind myself in those moments that there's so much here, I'm never alone, and we always are connected. But it's something that we can't think about and go into our mind about. It's when we're quiet and that we feel that connection and that we're not alone. So I think that's an important aspect, is like that our mind and thinking, it starts to separate us. But when we let that thinking thing go, we can really start to feel the oneness and the source energy. There's so much in this book, but we'll get into it. Just in the first chapter, I love the analogies of like the slide and the clock was a little confusing to me, but maybe we'll get into that later. Thank you.
So the little black and white monster that you'll see on camera occasionally is my mom and dad's 6-month-old border collie puppy named Groot. And he is just a mess. So incredibly cute and energetic. I wish I could bottle him. Sandy, you would love the Audible version of this book. I have it both on Kindle and on Audible. And on the Audible version, it is his voice, Jarrad's voice, and it's also the narrator changes genders, ages, you know, so like because when I think of God, I think of everything. So it has to be, right? Because we are all God and we're everything. So, and as far as the Bible goes, like, I don't know whether to take the Bible less literally or more literally. Because when I actually read the Bible I interpret the Bible much differently than it was interpreted to me anytime I ever heard it, you know, preached. But when I actually read the words, and especially it almost seems like the more literally I take it, the more truth there is there. And I see how much was misinterpreted. And I think that's just natural because I mean, a lot of people haven't, especially people that have been brought up in a religious way, haven't been taught necessarily to explore these subjects that we're exploring, and you know, they're probably just interpreting it the way that it was interpreted to them. So I can see it is like that little game, and when you're in kindergarten where everybody whispers in the other one's ear and you get a whole different story at the end, I can see where that could easily happen. But when I actually read the Bible or other spiritual texts, you know, there's so much truth there. And then I think a lot of misunderstanding. And I'll give an example here. You know, I heard a lot growing up that God judges us, and therefore, you know, you better be good or you're going to burn in eternal hell, and this and that and the other. Well, now I like to say God doesn't judge, that there is no judgment. So, but I also say in the same breath, the only judgment is what we do to ourselves. Obviously, we judge others all the time. You know, even when we try not to, we wind up doing it. Anybody that says they don't is pretty much lying. But because we judge ourselves constantly, so we're judging others. So if we're judging ourselves and we're God, then I guess in a way God does judge. And when we're judging ourselves and judging others, we put ourselves in a state of hell, in a miserable state where everything just feels bleh, you know, and we're just in negativity, and everything is somebody else's fault, or we're a victim, or what, you know, that whole scenario. So that's why I say I don't know whether to take it less literally or more literally, or, you know, but I can see where my life just gets more bizarre by the day, you guys. I mean, and I'm involved in some things that, whether it's really happening or I'm imagining it's happening, I don't know, but like some really weird shit is happening in my life. and it's good, you know. There seems to be opportunities to open yourself up to more things. And then, like I said, whether it's real or imagined, I don't know. I honestly can't say. But a lot of people seem to be having the same hallucination, which is pretty cool. And that makes it even stranger. And I love that, you know, they say that what you see in your environment is a mirror of what's happening internally, or vice versa. And I see that so much every day, the internal conflict within myself and then what I see in my environment. And it's so fascinating. Like, life becomes more fascinating by the moment when you're really paying attention. And yet all those details, like you said, sometimes the mind, if you let the mind go with that, it can confuse things. It can take you out of connection with spirit, which for me, I notice that when I'm feeling those lonely moments, or those angry moments, or those judging moments, you know, that's when I'm not in my heart. So that's when I have to come back to the real moment right now and push everything out of the mind and breathe and remind myself of what's real in this moment, which is always only love when you come down to that one moment. So I don't know, you guys, but I love this book. I love Jarrad. Sandy, you definitely need to hear it through Audible though, because you'll really treasure it.
I'm going to jump back out a second, really quick. Because going back to a little bit of bouncing off of what Sandy and Catherine says, starting reading this book made me think of somebody else I've listened to and followed a little bit and gotten into some of the things, is Abraham Hicks, who is somebody that, it's more along the lines of the law of attraction and stuff, but the way they talk and the way is Catherine Hicks, the wife of Jerry Hicks, but she's the one that channels, you know, Abraham, and is associated with that, and how she speaks and stuff, because it's her, but she's speaking, I think, more from a male perspective, and how that comes through and what comes through, and some of the things that have said there kind of are making me, are making me think of that when I read this book, and how, the questioning and the stuff going back and forth and things like that. So, and I think I'm going to get the Audible version too, Catherine, because I think I would enjoy that too, just to hear the play off instead of just in my head kind of trying to think of how it's being played off. But hearing it might also give it a different dynamic and add some depth to it for me.
Yeah, it's not a Audible version, Dan. It's on Spotify and on Apple Play, maybe, but in the event, the event that I created on Facebook in our group, you can find those two links to get to those recordings. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not on Audible at this point, but yeah, I wanted to just say a couple of things. You mentioned the loneliness, and I wanted to just kind of present, we all have times when we feel lonely. And I know that there are people who are surrounded by people in all aspects of their life and still feel lonely. I remember when I was a teenager, I had my whole family around me. I had friends at school. I had my whole, school life and this and all these things going on in my life. I had a boyfriend, everything. And I still felt lonely. And, so I mean, even when we're in relationships and even when we're surrounded by people, we still have this story that we tell ourselves. And the story is that we're lonely. We tell ourselves we're lonely because of this, because people don't understand me. People aren't like me. They don't see me. They aren't this, blah, blah, blah. We have all these little stories that we tell ourselves. And, you know, when we can change what we're telling ourselves, we can say that we aren't, you know, we can tell ourselves whatever we want, and whatever we tell ourselves is how we're going to feel, right? Or, you know, that, at least that's been my experience. And I feel like more often than not, when we're telling ourselves something that we don't like, you know, whether it's people don't understand me, or I'll never make friends, or all this, or, you know, all these people hate me, or whatever we're telling ourselves. I just lost my train of thought. Oh, it's because we're fearing, you know, things from the past, the stories that we've told ourselves from the past, or we're fearing something that might happen in the future. And, you know, because if we're thinking, okay, you know, I'm never going to find somebody that understands me, or who likes me, or who is something about, you know, something that, you know, obviously that's what we're trying. It's kind of like where we're focusing our energy, versus, you know, if we start coming up with thoughts of being happy and being loved and being, you know, or just, you know, I don't know. It's just, it comes back to, I'm reminded of the What to Say When You Talk to Yourself book by Shad Helmstetter, is that, you know, when we're feeling in these down low spaces, what are we telling ourselves? What thoughts are coming into our head that we're going, ugh, you know, we're doing that to ourselves. And how can we turn that around? How can we change it to something else, so that we change that feeling? Because, I mean, I think that in any given situation, we can create, like you were saying, Catherine, our own hell by just saying nasty things to ourselves. You know, what nasty things are we saying to ourselves to make ourselves feel that way? And how can we reword that? How can we change? What do we ultimately, if we want to change, what do we have to change in our thought process? Just like way back, and Angel, you probably don't know this because, you know, you weren't part of the conversation, but when we were reading that book, that was back when you were about ready to move south and be with Ty's family. And I had so much anger and hatred, and I was so mad at his family for stealing you away from me. These were the things I was telling myself. I'm like, they're horrible, they're this, they're going to take her away, they're going to, all these things. And I was making myself miserable thinking those thoughts. And when I changed the thoughts around, I like wrote down new things. Angel's going to have a great and loving new family. She's going to have another family that loves her. She's going to have another family that helps her take care of Connor. You know, she's going to have this other family that's all, they're going to offer her things that I could never have, or they're going to show her things that I never could have. I just wrote out like all these different sentences that changed what I was thinking. And when I read through those a few times, it only took like 5 or 6 times of reading these new sentences, I had a whole new thought process, a whole new perspective. It was like magic. And all of a sudden I wasn't upset anymore. And I mean, sure, I'm going to miss you, obviously, but it wasn't the same. It was like, instead of being angry, then I'm like, oh, okay, well, there's maybe some opportunities there instead. And so anyway, the reason I'm re-mentioning that is just because when we tell ourselves whatever thing, or when we're feeling low, it's because we've got thoughts in our head, and it's like, recognize, what are those thoughts? What are we telling ourselves to make us feel crappy about this thing? And can I change it? You know, what can I say to myself instead? And to me, in my experience, it's like magic. When you just change those thoughts, it's all of a sudden something different is going to happen. It's going to be, you're going to feel different. You're not going to feel the same way. So anyway, that's my thoughts for that.
I'm going to jump back out again. I'm doing a lot of jumping out today. Wow. Just to kind of go with what you were saying, I have done some of those things where I've tried to change my thoughts and processes and stuff in relation to certain aspects of my life. But it also is hard when you come home and you walk into a house that, you know, that you're used to having certain people around, and there's just silence, except for a dog that yaps at me when I come in because he's finally happy that somebody's here. I don't think he really cares who, as long as it's somebody that, takes care of him, takes him out to walk, and, and I think he is happy, but I've noticed that he has a lot of separation anxiety. So once we're back home, he likes to be like right there with us. So, but outside of that, um, when I walk in, there are days where I walk in and it literally feels, I can feel the stillness. I can feel the emptiness. And maybe that's part of what gets into me and, makes me feel and stuff. And I've even stood there and I tried to think some of those positive things, but then, you know, I can't explain. It still doesn't feel, I feel like I haven't changed it. And maybe it's just working on it more, and maybe it's just still working on telling myself those things. But it's hard when I'm telling myself those things in my head, but when I look around, there's nothing there, and nothing really to help make it, to go with it, to make it feel more real. What I'm telling myself, maybe that's part of what the issue is, and that might be part of where a lot of people get caught up even when they're out and about with a lot of people around them. But maybe that connectivity, maybe it's part of the connectivity. Then maybe that's what it is too. Maybe that's a little bit of what I'm missing too.
Hello, I wanted to jump out. I read a little bit ahead into chapter 2, and I know we're not quite there yet, but there was a couple little passages, I guess, or a couple little paragraphs that I came across that I feel are related to this conversation. And I'm just going to go ahead and read it, and then I'm going to read my notes. And so he asks, what about being stuck? I've heard about people reliving certain patterns, life in and life out. And he goes on to say, again, it's a choice. Many times, however, the person has forgotten they have a choice. They may have absorbed lifetimes of beliefs that back up their struggle. These beliefs, of course, are a direction of the energy. And until directed otherwise, the energy will continue to do what was asked to do. In this case, keep the bad times coming. And he goes on to ask, how do we break the cycle then? How do we choose to become unstuck if we A, don't know we have a choice, and B, don't even know we're stuck? And he says, by proclaiming to all that is, I am self-love. And right there, that kind of hit a spot, kind of made me realize a little bit that by proclaiming I am self-love is by proclaiming you are all that is. Self-love is all that is. Hang on, buddy. Give me just a second. All right, hang on. Give me a second. And so it's kind of saying those are the same thing. So by proclaiming that, I'll continue reading. Sorry, I got sidetracked. And in so doing, you invoke divine love, which is self-love, and you free yourself to choose. This causes a chain reaction in the whole of collective consciousness. Eventually, the entire vibration will rise beyond the tipping point. And as such is a brief description of what you would call the ascension process. And that just it really made me think, because it says by proclaiming all that is, I am self-love, by proclaiming that I am self-love and doing so, you are invoking divine love, which is, we all know that we're all divine beings. We've all kind of come across this, and that we are all God, and God is a divine being, and we are in touch, such divine beings. And by proclaiming that self-love, by loving yourself, by really feeling it and really proclaiming it and accepting it, you invoke this divine love of loving yourself, because you're loving a divine being. And in doing so, you radiate this love energy, and everybody knows that this energy is such a high energy. It's such an intoxicating energy. So when you're just already radiating it, you radiate it to your circle of people, new circle of everybody that you know, and in turn, they feel it, they pick up on it as well too. And so they feel it. And so once they feel it, it's kind of like a slow process, because it's not like an immediate, but they feel it coming off you and they're like, yes, this feels amazing kind of thing, and so they accept it. And in turn, it just kind of goes out in like a rippling effect into the entire collective conscious. And eventually the entire vibration will be rise beyond the tipping point of all these feelings. And also to go back a little bit with the whole being stuck, let's see, it's a little bit further down. It says, what about genetic patterns? Sorry, my kids are yelling in the background. What about genetic patterns and energetic beliefs? Why would I take on stuff like that? Why would I not be born just knowing my connection? And he says, you've chosen to have a certain experience a certain way in a certain perceivable time-space moment. There is no other answer. Genetic beliefs, as all other beliefs, simply serve as contrast that allows for new areas of contrast, which lead to new possibilities and greater expansion of awareness of self. Okay, hang on. Everything is evolving, even what you consider to be God. God is the whole creation, and creation is constantly experiencing itself in new ways.
Hey, Grandma, that's you.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought in the middle of reading that when he came in and interrupted me, and that wasn't really what I was trying to go for. I got lost.
Oh, wait.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop there. I got really excited, and then I kind of said what I mostly wanted to say about the beginning of the whole self-love and everything like that. I really felt like that kind of really needed to be said in this conversation. I know it was a little ahead, but okay, give me just a minute. I'll be right back. Thank you.
I'm reminded of a couple of things with, oh, jump out, Karen. I see you unmute.
I just wanted to say, hi, Grandma, that's you. That was great. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's funny. But I'm reminded of a couple of things. When I was struggling with, my relationship with my husband, we went through some tough times. We had this period of time where everything was just so hard. And, and I realized that a lot of the stuff that was happening was because of what I was saying to myself. And it wasn't until I changed those thoughts and those thought patterns that I started to see a change in our relationship. And this didn't happen overnight. It took a long time. But there's a few different things that I read during that time, and one of which reminds me the I am self-love aspect of, that reminds me a lot of the Ho'oponopono teaching. It's in a number of things, but for me, it came through to me in the book Zero Limits by Joe Vitale. And one of the things that he talks about in there is when stuff comes up that makes us feel crappy, is he just says, just repeat this. Just repeat these 4 things. I am sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And I love you. And he said, you don't even have to know why you're saying these things, because your inner being, your inner self, your everything already knows the meanings behind these things. But yet at the same time, if we think those words through, when we say, I'm sorry, we're saying, for whatever it is we're telling ourselves, I'm sorry that I believe this. I'm sorry that I said this to myself. I'm sorry to everything, every aspect of whatever this feeling is. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. It's like, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for feeling that way. Forgive yourself for expressing that energy out into the universe. Forgive yourself for everything related to that. Thank you is that whole gratitude thing for allowing you to see things differently, for experiencing things differently, for trying to do something differently. And then I love you is obviously, it's just all about love, being in that moment. And for me, when I first read that book and I first started trying to change what was going on in my mind about, my relationship, I was saying that shit to myself all day long, every day, in every instance. Every time some little thing would pop up, it was my stop phrase, if nothing else. It was that, okay, here I have this feeling coming up. It's making me feel like crap. I'm just going to stop it right now by just simply saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And I repeated that to myself over and over and over and over and over again until those thoughts didn't pop up anymore. And then when we read the book, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself, I learned, oh, okay, this is what I need to do after I say that. I say this stop phrase, and then I choose this new, I write down these sentences that I want to say to myself instead of this crappy thing I'm saying to myself. And that helped. That was another step. And then later on, I went through a program, and I can't remember what the program was called. It was Mind Valley put it out, and it was by Christy Marie Sheldon. And Christy Marie Sheldon takes you through negative crap that comes up in our thought processes, whether it's relationships or our work or our life or our feeling, every single thing, every possible fear scenario thought process. She takes you through it, and she says, she says, delete, destroy, destory across all time, space, dimensions, and reality. So in every way, shape, or form, delete the story that I'm telling myself. Delete, destroy, de-story everything about this feeling that I'm having, because it's not true, because that's what it is. It's a story that we're saying to ourselves, and we can change that by releasing it, letting it go, putting it out of our mind. It's not true. It's just a story we tell ourselves. So when, Dan, for instance, when you're coming home and you're feeling that stillness in your house, is you're telling yourself, this is so lonely. I don't know the exact words. This is my idea of what you're telling yourself. Is you're telling yourself, this is lonely. I'm by myself. There's no one here. This sucks, right? Those kind of thought processes, even if they're not right here in your mind, maybe you're just having these feelings because this is how you've programmed yourself for all these years, is you've been alone for a long time, and so when that feeling comes up, you can say one of these things, I am self-love, and keep saying I am self-love until it feels different. Or you can say delete, destroy, destory across all time, space, dimensions, and realities. Or you can say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. And there's any number of things that we can change. If we don't know what words to change our thoughts to, is we can at least say these things to ourselves. And the first thing that popped into my head when you said you come home and you feel the stillness, I'm like, what a blessing. And I know that maybe for you, you're feeling it's not a blessing, and because of whatever you are experiencing, and you're telling yourself. And yet at the same time, I'm like, how many times do all of us at some point, we have all this crap going on, and there's this, and we're being pulled this way and pulled that way, and people are saying this, and and I'm just like, God, I just want 10 minutes of peace, absolute peace, and still and quiet, and not having the TV going, and not having this going, and not and all those things. And so for that peace, I've said to myself many times, I wish I could just go and be by myself completely for a long time. So here's the thing, Dan, you're the version of us that gets to be by yourself. And do that for me. I don't know. I know that sounds really silly, but we're talking about, if we go back to the previous book that we talked about, and we're saying, we're saying that we come here and we plan these things for ourselves. We plan these life experiences because, we've chosen to come here and do this, not only for ourselves, but for how that affects everyone else. And if we embrace what we've created for ourselves, what can that mean to us? What can that be why do we do it? What was the purpose of it? What can I learn from it? How can I experience this for how I'm supposed to affect the whole rest of the world? You know, what opportunity is available for me in this situation that wouldn't be available if it was different? So I appreciate you so very much, Dan, for your the stillness that you have. I mean, I know that maybe that sounds silly, but I do. I'm like, I can't have that. So thank goodness somebody can. I mean, I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Don't get me wrong. I have come home, and there are days where I've come home after I've been out Ubering all day and dealt with people in my car. And I'm sure Catherine can understand where I'm coming from on this, having herself done it in the past. And at that point, you do come walking in your house, and it's like, I don't want anybody to bother me. I don't want anybody to talk to me. I don't want the TV on. I just want to sit here in silence for a little bit. And in those moments, I have totally enjoyed it. I have literally sat there, just sat in my chair and just not turned anything on, not done anything, and I've loved it. And so in those moments, it's been great. But those have been few and far between. And going back to what I was saying, it comes back from, I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever really felt alone except for when I was younger and going through what I went through with my real mom and stepdad, except for trying to protect my sister. But at the same time, growing up and stuff, I don't think I ever really felt alone. It's only been within the last 4 or 5 months that it's kind of hit me, since my last roommate moved out with him and his daughter. And I've just, the difference has been so profound for me that it's so different, because I've lived by myself before and it didn't really bother me per se. I think this, because of the relationship that he and I had and the things like that, and it was familiar like with my own family, it became kind of like that, and I got very accustomed to it. So I think that's part of what I was missing, and part of what, when I walk home or come home, it's like, okay, is this it? And I do, tell myself, and I try and look at all the blessings I have and look at all the good things and all the, and sometimes it's, and maybe I'm not doing it enough to keep that reminder in my head. So then I still let those other feelings kind of take over and control. But I also feel that's, how do I get the most out of understanding those feelings and getting through those feelings if I don't go through those feelings too? So it's kind of that double-edged side where I don't like them, but I don't want to necessarily negate them or not experience them either, because I believe that somehow when I'm going through them, and when I do get to that point where I finally can say, okay, and flip that switch, so to speak, I'll appreciate that and have that to hold and carry for other times when it might come up in my life, and I can say, okay, I've been through this. I know what this is like. This is how I got through it, and this is how I moved past it. So I think that's where I'm kind of at. I don't want to necessarily negate it and not go through it, but I also want to, I want to get to that point where I do come to the resolution of whatever the resolution I need to get to is. So maybe that's more where I'm at. I'm not hating it. I'm not hating it, but I hate it, if you can understand the dichotomy of all that.
How about I jump in here and add a new perspective as the unseen voice everybody hears, that I am unable to be by myself. I have to have someone to help feed me and cook for me, things like that. And at the same time, upset about, I don't know about upset is the right word, but wanting something to be different than what it is, how I've gotten where I am, that not comfortable with the living situation that you're in completely. because you want to be by yourself, but yet you can't. Because how are you going to be able to sustain yourself if you can, well, I can't cook or whatever. I just get to eat their original fast food like apples and finger food, celery, whatever, things that you can grab and eat and not have to cook or whatever. So it's a whole different perspective. And as a man thinketh, so is he, is what keeps coming into my head. That we speak into, just as the Bible says, we were all formed, that he just spoke it into being. And so it's a really difficult thing because it's not necessarily, I can speak all day that I don't have MS and it doesn't seem to go away. So it's a matter of perspective and, again, the thoughts in your head. So I hope everyone can hear me.
We heard you, Lori. Thank you so much. And I love the point that you bring forward, which is things are. And there's a certain acceptance that has to come with that. Now, granted, you know, if you don't like the life you're living and you want to learn new skills and change your life and all of that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about just accepting what is. Like Lori could, you know, her perspective, instead of leading the amazingly active life that she leads and being an inspiration to so many, she could totally take the perception of, oh, you know, I can't live by myself, I can't do this by myself, poor me, you know, I'm no good to anybody.
Oh no, we lost Catherine.
We lost her. Maybe she'll jump back on here in a minute. I wonder if she has power out.
Lose her.
Oh, wait, there she is. There she is. That was weird.
We didn't lose her. The system did.
Uh-huh. Are you still there, Catherine? I don't know. Weird.
Yeah, I got taken out for a minute, but I'm back. But anyway, you know, she could choose to tell herself all kinds of lies. And I love what you said, Samantha, about when we're feeling bad, it's probably because of something in the past or something about the future. And I would say that it's much simpler than that, and call it a life hack or whatever. But, you know, you're not accepting what is in that moment, and you're lying to yourself about something. And just that fact that you're lying to yourself and you've separated from love is what's causing you to feel bad. And it really doesn't even have anything to do probably with what's in the past or what's in the future. It's just that you've separated yourself right then. And I know that we're getting ready to stop here, so I'll just say my final thought, which is, what if the theme that runs in your life, like nobody hears me, nobody understands me, I'm lonely, whatever it is, what if that voice is actually the voice of your higher self speaking to you? So if you hear I'm lonely, is that because you're not spending quality time with your higher self and really connecting to God, spirit, whatever you want to call? You know, when I hear in my head throughout my life, you're not listening to me. Could that be my higher self telling me you're not listening to me? I don't think we're meant to do this on our own, guys. You know, we come in and we're veiled, if you will, but all of us have direct connection to God because we are God. And so I think, you know, as much as we're taught you have to go through somebody else, if nothing else, here that you don't have to go through anybody else. This past week was a very strange week for me. I got pulled into mediumship, which is a place that I'm not particularly comfortable, but evidently have some skills at. And it's not necessary. You can connect with whatever you're trying to connect with on your own. You don't necessarily need a medium, but at the same time, having experienced it, like, I don't know, it would just freak some people the F out. So I'm, maybe I had to volunteer to do this stuff. I don't know. So I love you guys. Have a great week.
I will jump out and say, without having gotten as far into the book as a couple of you, normally I'm a speed reader and get ahead of everybody, and I'm the one that's saying, "Come on, hurry up, catch up to me." So this is an odd situation for me. I'm usually way ahead of everybody. So, but I appreciate some of the things that was shared because, you know, um, in a weird roundabout way, this is in some ways kind of new feeling I've been going through over the last few months, and um, so some of this has been helpful to help me look at it. And like I said, I have reframed it. I have told myself some things, but I agree with you, Samantha. It is not a overnight thing. It does take time and constant reminding. And then what you were sharing, Angel, I think that had some great merit. And of course, I always love when Catherine shares what she shares and stuff. I always seem to just really take that to heart, and that means a lot to me. And Lori, I hate to say I didn't hear everything because I hate to admit it, I had to run to the restroom really quick, but I think I got the gist of it, and knowing that we all have our things that we go through, but it's also nice to know that there's this group that I have that I can share these things with, and openly and honestly, and not feel bad for sharing them. And it would be nice if, I hate to say this, if there would be a couple more guys in here that would, be willing to jump in, and, you know, I think they could learn a lot from this and get a lot out of this. And, but still, I still love you all, and you're amazing.
I want to say a final farewell since I didn't speak last week. I could not get into my computer. There is nothing that makes me feel more incapable than to not be able to do things that I've done all along. And I've had problems getting into my computer, getting into my password vault, just doing things, paying something that I have saved months for to be able to pay. And anyway, I apologize, and I apologize, Samantha, that I didn't get back with you and say I was still alive. I really did appreciate the I am self-love, and I didn't know if we were that far along in the book or not, but that is something that I really would benefit from and learn from, to do that. And Samantha, all the things that you reminded us of, they were so good. I must have gone to that. I forget what it's called, but that woman's thing before, because I remember almost being blessed with that saying, and it was so helpful. And it just reminds me, I just think Connor saying to you, "Hi, Grandma, that's you," is helpful for you to think too, that he knows who you are. Someone so young and so small, he knows who you are. I think that's great. I love all you guys. I'm so glad to be back with you. Thank you.
I hate to say it's time to say goodbye, but we are past the top of the hour. Anybody else have any final thoughts before we wrap up? Okay. It's been a wonderful chat today, and I absolutely appreciate all of you so much. So for those of you who are watching, you know, comment below. If you're watching this on Facebook, you know, share a comment when something comes up that you're listening to, post it right there on Facebook. We'd love to hear or see what you have to think about what we've been talking about. And if you're on YouTube, then click like below the video there and subscribe to us. And that way you'll get an update each time we upload a new video. Comment on YouTube, and if you'd like to join us, you can come over to mindsetmasterycollective.com. That will link you right into our Facebook group where you can join and be, if you want to join us on here, we'd love to have you. So with that, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing week, and we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.